The scent of sawdust had barely faded from the morning air when Ethan Carter received the letter that would splinter his world. From the expansive veranda of his High Creek timber estate, where his authority was etched into every pine-covered ridge, he held the cream-colored paper as if it were a lit fuse. Sawmills hummed below, freight wagons carved paths of commerce, and his engineers were even testing a promising vein of gold. His name was a currency that could buy empires of wood and stone. But none of that power mattered against the careful handwriting on the envelope, its edges singed as if by some desperate fire. Inside was a daguerreotype, a portrait of a girl he'd never seen but felt he knew in his bones. Her eyes were the color of a coming storm, and a sly, knowing smile played on her lips, as if she understood a secret the world had long forgotten. Her presence seemed to reach through the fragile image and seize him. Beneath it, 3 lines were scrawled, a message that would echo through the canyons of his soul. This is my daughter, Clara Rose. She lives in Ironbark Hollow. She needs grit more than gift star. The letter was from a woman now in her grave, the nurse who had pulled Ethan's own mother from a blinding blizzard 20 years ago, nursing her through the very childbirth that had brought him into the world. A debt of honor, he thought, a concept he hadn't considered in years. Even for men who believed they had purchased everything of value, some accounts still had to be settled. A rugged 250 miles of mountain terrain separated his estate from Ironbark Hollow. For Ethan Carter, it was a pilgrimage he had to make. He saddled his sturdiest gelding, packed his saddlebags not with gold but with tools and field rations, and rode toward a future he couldn't yet map. Ironbark Hollow was less a town and more a testament to stubborn survival, composed of a crooked main street and a water tower that leaned as if exhausted. He discovered Clara Rose inside the town's single-aisle mercantile, her hands, which looked too fine for the task, weighing beans on a scale bitten deep with rust. "You must be Clara," he said, his voice accustomed to giving orders but now uncertain. She looked up, and her storm-gray eyes assessed him in a long, quiet moment. "And you must be the lumber king who thinks a long ride earns him sainthood," she responded, her voice flat and without a trace of a smile. Her words struck him with more force than a physical blow. He had ridden into town anticipating gratitude, perhaps even relief. He had prepared to be a savior. Instead, he was confronted by a young woman who looked upon his immense wealth as if it were a stain that needed to be scrubbed away. She offered him not admiration but a challenge. He had to prove that his heart had traveled those 250 miles along with his body. Reaching under the counter, she produced a worn account book, its pages filled with the names of the 41 families in Ironbark Hollow who were in arrears. Debts for flour to bake bread, medicine for the sick, and seed for crops that might not grow. She explicitly forbade him from wiping the slate clean with a stroke of his pen. Instead, she dared him to remain, to learn the texture of their struggles, and to help the town discover how to stand on its own 2 feet. Her final test was delivered with a quiet solemnity that silenced the dusty air of the store. From a small cloth pouch, she revealed a simple copper ring, inlaid with a sliver of turquoise. It was the very same ring offered to his mother 2 decades prior, a choice presented by Clara's own mother. Ethan's mother had been given a decision: return to the comfort and security of her powerful husband, or accept the ring, a symbol of freedom and the right to choose her own path. She had chosen freedom. Days later, a fever had claimed her life. Now, Clara presented Ethan with the identical choice. He could leave his fortune and his old life fully intact, or he could stay and finally become useful. Ethan stayed. The decision settled in his soul with the weight of destiny. He sent a wire to his foreman with instructions that sounded more like a revolution than a business plan. Sell half the timber leases, redirect the capital into grain cooperatives, and fund a new sawmill that would be owned and operated by the workers of Ironbark Hollow. The man who once commanded armies of lumberjacks now learned the humble arts of mending wagon wheels and felling deadwood for winter fires. He found himself in the one-room schoolhouse, teaching arithmetic to children who had never dreamed of such knowledge. When a syndicate representing the railroad arrived, their polished shoes and slick contracts felt alien in the town's dusty chapel. They offered to buy the entire valley for a freight spur, a sum that would make every family rich. But at a town meeting convened by Clara and Ethan, the community faced a different kind of choice. They turned the offer down. With Ethan's seed money as their foundation, they formed a cooperative mill, an enterprise that would pay every family a share of its profits, weaving their futures together. 6 months after his arrival, his hands blistered and his ego trimmed to its essential core, Ethan asked Clara to wear the copper ring. She agreed, her gaze steady and clear. Not because he had rescued her, she explained, but because he had allowed the town and her to rescue him. The valley prospered, not with the sudden boom of a gold strike, but with the slow, deep-rooted growth of a well-tended forest. A nurse's clinic opened its doors, the schoolhouse was expanded, and tidy cabins began to line the creek where shanties had once stood. Years later, when word arrived that Ethan had inherited his father's vast and distant fortune, the man he had become knew exactly what to do. He broke the estate apart, piece by piece, endowing mountain communities just like ironbark, turning a legacy of acquisition into one of opportunity. Standing one evening with Clara on a ridge that overlooked their bustling cooperative mill, the lights of their town glowing like fallen stars in the valley below, Ethan Carter finally understood an arithmetic his ledgers had never been able to teach him. A man is at his richest not when he possesses the most, but when what he owns can thrive without him. And he knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his heart, that the longest and most meaningful journey he would ever ride was the one that had taken place entirely inside himself.